text, grid mode, hexadecimal, and unformatted.
Yeah. Okay. And in
Uh,
new version we have tree mode option. So it will be the data will be shown in a hierarchical mode. So there will be plus icons. So if you expand that plus icon, then the lower order data will be shown.
okay.
Yeah, you were about to ask some question.
Yeah, I was seeing one option there that one record per row or one record per column. I think that's a transpose, like columns become rows and rows become columns, something like that. Yep.
Yes, yes, you can pivot the roles.
Yeah.
And you
And
can, I
yep.
think you have a pivot option in the buttons enabled after viewing the data, I guess. And you have refresh button also, it will refresh after multiple executions of the graph. And if you want to save the data to any Excel, you can export it.
Okay.
Those options are there. So
I
what?
already see, like in export it is a tab delimited file.
Yeah, yes, I think so. You're not able to change any options. Only you have tab delimited file.
Tab delimited text or all files, so no other option is there.
Okay.
Maybe it's the Excel option is in the new version, right?
Yeah, yes. So when I started out, right, I actually started with 1.13 version.
Okay.
So I didn't work with this 1.10 version.
Okay.
So maybe in 1.13 version I had Excel file, because now uh, you- obviously we have the Excel files options also. I think we have multiple options to export.
Okay.
Yeah. So the things you will not be needing, but I'm just informing you so that you
Yeah, yeah.
have these multiple options. If in case if you really need that one, you can use it.
Okay.
And so through input files, what kind of data can be described? So there are both fixed size and variable length data types. You can use fixed length delimiters, fixed sizes, or variable length delimiters. And
Right.
your ASCII, EBCDIC, Unicode character sets are supported. So if you are reading data from a mainframe source, so probably you will be using these kind of character sets before your actual data. So it will be like UTF-8 string, or uh, one more character, encode something. So those character sets will prefix your data type actually.
Okay.
So before your string or decimal, you will be giving this EBCDIC and the UTF-8. So those kind of character sets are also supported. And we can have the usual strings, numbers, packed decimals, dates, etc. Complex data formats like vectors and nested record fields are also supported.
Okay.
So vectors are nothing but arrays in programming languages. And your nested records, that will be similar to your structures in programming languages.
Okay.
So let me give you one example. You are able to see the notepad screen, right?
Yes. Yes.
Hello, Ashish?
Yeah, I think you lost power or something.
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
1 second, I'll open. Yeah. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So this particular TML has both vector columns as well as record data type.
Right.
So this phone column, so for one particular record, I can have
10
five
different.
phone numbers. Five phone numbers. So means
Okay.
so this is the
Okay.
length.
Yeah. Yep. Got it.
You got it right.
Yep.
And we have one address field which is a record field. So within that address field I can have city and pin.
Okay. And one question: can
Yeah.
this address field be a vector?
Yeah, yes, it can be. So we'll be specifying here.
So, okay, got it.
So it will be a vector of records.
Right. So, like the file will have city pin, city pin, city pin.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And I think
And
you will not be able to use generate records to generate sample data for vector and record fields, but in your real-time project scenarios, like you'll be getting, if you are getting vector fields, then you have to use vector data types in your TMLs.
but at least if I create my own file with data in it, I can use it, right?
Yeah, yes.
And like Karthik, one question: is
Yeah.
record within a record also supported? Like just like we have this DML which is record, and we have
Okay.
another record. Can we have another record within that address field?
Yeah, yes. Multiple
Okay.
nested records are also supported.
Okay.
Yeah. So access to field characteristics, it is done through the attributes pane. So we have the attributes pane option in the grid view editor. So we can use that to specify the extra field characteristics.
Karthik, since we were talking about the DML, I have one question.
Yeah, yes, tell
Many
me.
times the incoming records have a header and a footer record and some detail records, right? So the record structure basically differs between the header, detail and trailer records. So do we have a provision of having like 3 different record formats for the same file or something?
No. So if you are having header and footer records, so in that case you have to read the entire file using a single data type, and then in the transformation you have to drop the header and footer records if you do not want them, or if you want it for further transformations, you can just separate the detailed records from the header and footers.
Okay.
So those kind of stuff we have to do in the transformations.
Okay. Got it.
And to answer your question, we don't have really 3 kinds of data formats to read a particular data.
Okay.
So if in case you are not able to read the particular file, so what you can do is you can read it with single field data type like this. So it will be like read entire thing
Mhm. Yep.
data, something like this.
Okay.
So your data column will contain all the records.
Okay.
So after that, once you get the data into the Initio, you can just review the data, how it looks, and then you can decide what can be done.
Okay. Got it. It's basically similar to the way I program in COBOL.
Okay, okay.
So I got the concept. Not a problem.
Okay, and even we have COBOL to DML utilities also.
Okay.
I'm not very specific in COBOL, but I have seen the generate DML utility which transfers this COBOL, some file will be there, I'm not sure, into DML utility.
Okay.
Is there any record format file in COBOL?
Not really. Like at least what we are using is either we use the SQL tables or the physical files that we create on ICDs. There is no specific COBOL files or something.
Okay. Okay, but we'll use one file which is used in the utility which converts the COBOL specification into DML.
Okay. It must be some kind of copybook or a data structure that is
Yeah,
converted.
that copybook, CPY file, right?
Yep. Yep.
That file. So that file can be used to create the DML.
Okay.
So actually, what is the copybook? It's a specification about the data, or it is the original data file?
It is basically a data structure within COBOL, nothing else.
Okay, so that can be used to create the DML. When we have that information, Abhinisho can read the data and convert that particular data into a DML structure, so you can read it in
Okay.
Abhinisho.
Okay.
So this kind of third-party collaboration is there. So you can use it with COBOL and multiple. So whatever you can use the input structures. So those kind of options will be there. Suppose if you are reading the XML file, you can use the XST document to create the DML.
Okay.
So those kind of things there. So input file is over. Let's discuss about the output file. It is similar to the input file except it has the port at left end. So it has one input port and it can be used to create a serial file or a multi-file. There are no parameters as such. So the usage is specify the output file name along with its absolute path, layout and the DML to write the data in the input. And one more thing I want to specify is when you open the properties, you can see the label option where you can change the labels.
Yep.
And you can see the file type here: input, output, intermediate or lookup. Currently it is selected as output. So if you want to change this particular output file into an input file, you can just click on input and click on apply or OK. So it will change the file component. It will change into input file. Like if you don't want to get the input file from the component organizer, again you can change this file itself.
Okay. Karthik, one question. Like,
Yeah.
if I want to have a work file kind of thing, wherein one part of the graph writes into the file and then the second part of the graph uses that file and does something, is that possible?
Okay. Yeah, yes, you can have multiple branches in the graph. Your graph doesn't need to be in a single branch like from left to right.
No, but the output file is output file. How does it become input file? That's my question.
Okay, there are two ways. You can use an intermediate file which will act as both output as well as input.
Okay.
Or you can use output file in the first branch and you can use another input file component in the second branch to read the same file.
Okay.
But you have to make sure that you are not reading and writing in the same phase.
Right.
That should be done. So two possible solutions. You can use an intermediate file. If if you want the intermediate data to be stored, so in that cases we will be using the intermediate file.
Okay.
And output file and input file is another solution.
Right.
If you
That I was
do
thinking.
not mind using extra component.
Right. How do I change the phase?
Okay.
Or is it something a little advanced right now and we want to discuss
No,
it
no, no,
later?
no. Phases we already discussed. Okay, 1 second. Did we discuss phases and checkpoints?
Yes, we did. We briefly touched about it, and I got the concept.
I will not give you full things. 1 second. Let me go to the first presentation which we discussed. So we discussed parallelism in detail, layout
Yep.
in detail, ports, flows, phases and checkpoints. Okay, we didn't discuss it fully. Actually, we came for debugger concepts.
Yep.
Okay. So actually, when we discuss about lookup files, it will be useful. Okay, no problem. I will discuss it now. Okay, we discussed about generate and trash fully, watches fully. So only phases is pending. Finish up this and we can go back to phases. So your question is how to increase the phase, right? So similar to debugging toolbar, we have phase toolbar also.
Okay.
So in my GDE screen currently it is not enabled. So you can check in your GDE screen, go to view option and toolbars and click on phase.
Okay.
You'll see one more set of tool icons will be available in your toolbar with the right arrow, left arrow.
Yes.
Okay, so if you click on any particular component and click on a right arrow, I think it will show you the tooltip: increment phase, decrement phase. So you can use those icons to increase or decrease the phase.
Yes, I can.
Yeah. So phase and checkpoints. So what are they and how do we use it, and under what circumstances we will be using it? So let's discuss about phases now. Phase is a stage of a graph that runs to completion before the start of the next phase. Okay, so if I tell you like it will run to completion before the start of the next phase, that is ideally dependent on us, whether we are putting all the components in a single phase or we are making the components execute phase by phase.
Right.
So every component by default will be in zeroth phase. That means all the components will start at the same time.
Right.
And if its execution is dependent upon other components, it will wait. Otherwise, it will start its own execution. And if we really want to limit the number of components which are executing at the same time, and we want to limit the memory consumption, we can use the phases to limit our memory consumption and resource consumption.
Okay.
Okay, so it is given here. By dividing the graph into phases, we can utilize the resources like memory, disk space, and CPU cycle. Okay, so the boundary between two phases is called a phase break, and it belongs to the first of the two phases. So a phase break is something where your phase breaks into the next phase. And when there is a phase break, actually the component immediately before a phase break, it writes all the data passing through it into temporary files
Okay.
in the layout of the component immediately after the phase. So when the first phase finishes running, the components after the phase break read these temporary files to begin the next phase.
Okay.
Okay, so there is the catch here. Why are we writing these temporary files after each phase break?
Otherwise, how do you ensure that all the data has been written like if we use memory for it, it will be a big deal, right? It could be GBs.
Yes, correct. So instead of using the RAM, it is using the disk to write the temporary files.
Right.
So okay, it is partly correct, and the main usage is for recovery. So in any case, your graph file, suppose we are having a big graph and we are having 5 phases. So your graph has completed 2 phases and it has failed during the 3rd phase.
Okay.
And so when you are rerunning the graph, you don't want to start the graph from the first phase.
Right.
Because it is already completed. So
Right.
if you have that recovery information, you can actually run from the completed phase. So basically you can execute from where the failure has occurred.
And how do we do that?
So for that particular point, the phase and checkpoints are useful. And I don't know whether you have noticed or not, if you have ever had a graph failure and if you have multiple phases, your ab initio will ask you whether you want to remove the entire job and start afresh, or you continue, or you want to continue from the last run.
Okay.
When you get any error and if you try to rerun the graph, did you got those options?
I never did the phasing, right? So
Yeah, maybe because of that. But ab initio has this tendency, like
okay.
it will, and for your question, how do we do that? So it will,
Like production environment.
okay, so yeah, yes, I got. So if you're so basically your jobs will be scheduled using the wrapper job scripts. So inside your job scripts, your ab initio graph run command will be present. So in your job script, you have to handle the restarting capability, like before the actual execution of that particular graph command, you have to check if there are any recovery files present.
Okay.
So if there is any recovery file present, we have a particular format for recovery file, so it will be mostly your graph name.rec. So if there is any recovery file found in the working directory, so either you can choose to roll back the recovery file and you can start it from the end, or you can continue from the where you left off. So those kind of options will be presented. So you have to handle those things in wrapper scripts.
And will we be discussing it later in the training?
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
So I told about this particular temporary files creation, which is used for the next phase. So that particular place is called the checkpoint. So where the cooperating system saves all the information it would need to restore a job at that point. So in case of any failure, you can recover completed phases of a job up to the last completed checkpoint. So remember this, always the last completed checkpoint information will be available, so you can roll back it to the last completed checkpoint. Suppose if there are 2 completed checkpoints, you cannot go back to the previous one. You can always go back to the last completed checkpoint. And yeah, you can have checkpoints only at phase breaks. So when you set a phase in the GDE, by default it has a checkpoint at its phase break. So a checkpoint is indicated by this C icon with the blue background, and phases are indicated by numbers. So you can remove the checkpoint by clicking the toggle checkpoint button. I guess the toggle checkpoint button is also in the phase toolbar.
Yes.
So as the execution of the graph successfully passes through each checkpoint, there are a couple of things the cooperating system does. It deletes the information it has saved to be able to restore the job at the preceding checkpoint. So if it has passed checkpoint 2, it will remove all the information from checkpoint 1 because it doesn't need it at all.
Right. Right.
and it deletes the temporary files which has written in the phase breaks, and it commits the effects of the file system of all phases since the preceding checkpoint.
Okay.
Your file system changes are also will be done.
Okay.
Okay, so how to put this? Okay, suppose you have a single file and you are writing to the file in 3 phases. In 3 different phases, three different areas. Suppose if the graph has failed after the phase 2, your file will be having the information after phase 2. Like if you have deleted some records or you have inserted some records, those kind of information will be available in the phase 2, after phase 2. And if you do not want it, you can always set it in the properties of the file, like whether you want the file to be remain intact in case of failure, or you want to leave it to the default thing, like after each checkpoint the effects whatever which I have done after the execution can be committed or not. So
Okay.
this particular thing you can control it.
And the checkpoint is basically denoted by a simple bar on the flow, right?
Yeah, correct.
And what is
So
the advantage of toggling the checkpoint? Like, is it just saving memory or something, or what's that?
exactly, whether we want to save the temporary files or whether we want to have a recovery information in that particular phase, in that particular area. If you really,
Yep.
and one more point is always keep the lookup file in 0th phase. I will tell more about this when we see the lookup file.
Okay.
So rebooking watches, done with this first line. Do you have any doubt on this phases and checkpoints? Because these are the things which are actually handled by default in Initio, so we don't have to take extra care, but only we need to take extra care in using the phases.
Okay.
So the automatic recovery, those things are done by Initio automatically.
Okay.
So we have discussed about input file and output file. So you see these multiple options, input, output, intermediate. We can switch to any other file we want. We can in the properties window.
Okay.
So we have to specify the location in the URL. We have one more option to specify the path, that is called partitions.
Mm-hmm.
So if you click on partitions and if you specify the file name there, so it will be regarded as a different file, that will be called ad hoc multi-file, that we will be seeing later. And we have one more option also, add to catalog. This will be present in the output file. So if you want your output file to be used as a lookup file, you can click on this option, add to catalog, and your output file will be added to the catalog, which serves as the lookup file.
Okay.
So if you click on this particular option, your output file can be used as a lookup file. We'll see about this later.
Yeah.
And other options, okay. We have some options in the access tab. Actually, access tab appears for output files. We have some file handling options and file protection options. We can search the Unix permissions from here directly when we create that particular file. And we have other options also, delete file if it exists first, create file if it doesn't, append output to end of file when writing. So when you are executing multiple times, how you want to write, whether you want to append it or you want to delete and recreate. And we have the last option, don't roll back file if job fails. You want the file to remain intact. So those kind of stuff we can do here.
Okay.
So by default it will be delete and recreate.
Okay. And in the file protection, what is this execute?
So execute permission is the one we need to execute that particular object. So in Unix world, you don't need execute. permission for file. So if it is an executable script, like if it is a script like KSX script, if you have only read and write permissions, you cannot execute that particular script. You need execute permissions to run that particular script.
Okay.
So in file scenario, I think it will not be needed. So execute. And for directories, you need execute permissions to go in.
Okay.
So if you do not have execute permission on a particular directory, you cannot go inside.
Okay.
So I have listed what I have told about this access tab here. So the file does not exist, it will create it, and we have other option fail. It will stop the graph and issue an error. If the file exists, it will delete and recreate, append to file, and fail. So these kind of options we can set in the output file. Next is ports tab. Ports tab is similar to whatever we have seen. So that's okay. Configuring the dataset. So how do we want to specify an input file? We can specify the path name directly, or we can use the browse option here. We can, so it will open up the select file window where you can browse and select the particular data file which you have created already. Okay. So next is intermediate file. So it is also located in the dataset. So it can represent a serial file or a multi-file. So it has no any parameters. How to use it? You have to specify the file name along with its absolute path. So intermediate file is the main usage is when we want to see the intermediate results during a graph execution.
Right.
Suppose between a reformat and roll up, or after a sort and join component, if you want to save the intermediate results, you can use the intermediate file. It will act as both output and an input file, since it has both an input port as well as output port. When you want to save your intermediate results, you can use the intermediate file. It will be similar to all the file components. And the writing and reading process for intermediate file are in two phases. It receives records via its.
Does it change the phase?
Yes. So once you insert an intermediate file, all the components which follow the intermediate file will have an increase in the phase number.
Okay.
Yeah. So it receives records via its write port from the upstream component. When the flow of records into the write port is complete, the downstream component reads records from the read port. Okay. Then we have lookup file and adopt multi-file. We'll see about these components later. Let's discuss some transform components so that we can finish some case studies for today.
Karthik, one question.
Yeah.
The intermediate file, as we say, has two phases. Like the writing happens in one phase and the reading happens in the other phase. There could be scenarios wherein we are just using this file for logging purpose or something, right? And there is no real requirement that the writing should happen once and then the reading should happen. So is there any mechanism by which we can tell Ab Initio that it is okay to read and write at the same time?
No, actually it cannot be done, right? Because when you write a file, it will be logged for editing. So and while reading, you need the most recent data. So in that case, it will not be able to provide. So that's the reason this phasing concept was here.
Okay.
So if you are trying to read, I think you are talking about the read consistency in Oracle. In database, it is handled in a different way using the undo table spaces. But here, that possibility is not there in Unix file system. I think so. So that's why we have this phasing concept. So you cannot read and write into the same file in the same phase.
Okay.
But in Oracle, using this undo table space, I guess. So when you are writing data into an Oracle table, or you are updating and deleting and you still have a lock in it, you didn't commit the transaction, and whenever I try to view the data, it will give me the last committed data. So it will not get me the updated data what you have done. So that data is available in my undo table space. So it will be actually one more copy. So when your commit has been issued, the data in the undo table space will be deleted. So those kind of stuff Oracle handles automatically, but in Unix file system, I think that facility is not here. So that's why we have this phases.
And within a graph, we are able to control the phases. But let's say one graph writes to file, another graph reads it. So how do we handle that?
So we just have to make sure that that particular graph executes before this graph. Actually, that will be the case, because when you are using that file in another graph, you are implying that this graph has to be executed first.
Okay.
So let's discuss the components under transform folder. We'll discuss about the reformat component. One second, let me check what are the case studies we have here. Okay. Okay. Filter by expression. Okay. So let's see about the filter by expression component. So as the name suggests, filter by expression lets you filter the input records, whatever that is fed into this component, with the usage of an expression. So your DML expression or a transform function can specify a filter condition, and based upon that condition, your records will be filtered. And it can also be used to select a certain percentage of records, or to select every nth record based on the condition you specify. So if the particular parameter select underscore expression, so that's the parameter we use to specify our filter condition. If it returns true or 1, then the input record will be passed to the output port. Else the record will be sent to the deselect port. Option, and this deselect port is optional. Whether we want to have the deselected records or not, it is up to you. We don't need to connect a flow to the deselect port.
Right.
If you really want the filtered records, you can use the deselect port to collect the output.
Okay.
So these are the ports available, and we have reject, error, and log ports also, which are diagnostic ports, which will give you more information about the rejection. So how do we specify the filter by expression filters? Like suppose we have an employee information coming up and we want to filter the data by location. So we'll be specifying like this: in.city equal to Chennai. So in this case, all the records which have the city column as Chennai will be sent to the output port, and other records will be sent to the deselect port. You can combine multiple conditions also using the logical operators, and or all those operators are available. Actually, you can see the available operators and functions in the expression editor. I think you must have gone through the expression editor window, right?
No,
Yesterday I have shown you.
I don't recall it.
Okay, so when we clicked on the edit transform rules option, we got one small window where we selected the count function and then the field name also, right? When we are trying to use the roll-up. So that window is called expression editor. So in that expression editor, if you, so because so you can see the window names on the top of that particular window. So at first it will be tough to recall, so you just remember whenever the Ab initio opens a window, and later once you get used to it, it will be easier. So in that expression editor window, left side you will have the columns, and in the middle you will have the functions. On the right side you can see the operators.
Okay.
So all your arithmetic operators, logical operators, bitwise operators, so and what is it, mathematical functions, all the available functions are supported in Ab initio. So you can use the supported functions here in all your expressions, and you can have multiple conditions using and or, and you can use your if statements also, if else, else if, those are also supported. So if you want to filter two conditions, so in that case you have to use in.city equal to Chennai, or in.city equal to Bangalore. So you need to use double equal to check the equality condition. You should not use single equal to. Single equal to stands here for assignment operator.
Okay.
So when we are setting a value to a variable, you will be using equal to operator. When you are checking the equality condition, you should use double equal to.
I think Pascal language used to have this kind of thing, or that equal to, there was colon equal to, and normal equal to was a comparison.
Okay.
Okay. Question.
Yeah.
Can we use functions on these variables? Like for example, my city that comes in is in mixed case, and I want to do a comparison.
Yeah. Yes. You can use any functions you want. Suppose. Okay. So this is simple function is defined. Okay. Which actually looks into a list of cities.
Okay.
Number of vector. Just quickly finish up the reformat, and I will send you the case studies. Okay. So reformat, I think actually we have worked on it. So we can use the reformat to change the record format, or you can change the reformat to change the data. We can manipulate the existing data which is coming in the input port. So when I change, we can manipulate the record format also. We can drop some fields, we can add new fields, or we can combine fields.
Right.
Okay. So it is used to reformat the data as well as DML. This is the main point. We have one more component also that is used only to change the record format, but that component is called redefine format, and this is one is called reformat. So it can actually work on both the data record format as well as the data.
And what does redefine do?
Redefine, it will change only the record format. It will not actually work on the particular data.
Okay. Basically, like parent.
So whatever redefine format can do, that can be done inside reformat. So important parameters that are available in reformat are count, transform, and select. So transform is the parameter where we specify our mapping rules. Count, it accepts an integer from 1 to 20, which is used to increase the output port. The default value for the count is 1. So when you increase the count, it will actually increase the number of output ports, and you will get one more transform parameter also. So basically the idea is reformat can work on the same data and it can give you multiple outputs.
Okay. Like for one file,
yes,
it to be in caps, and one file you wanted to put lowercase, or one file
exactly. You can do multiple transformations, and you can redirect the output to separate flows. So in that case, it will be using the count and multiple transforms. And you have one more parameter called select, that is optional. that will actually work as a filter, and this filter will be applied before your transform.
Okay.
So instead of having input file filter by expression reformat, you can use input file reformat with the select parameter.
Okay.
And we have to keep in mind that the filter will be applied before the transform.
It's basically a combination of reformat without the select, like a filter by and then reformat.
Yes, exactly. So here I have a window which shows the increase in the count variable. So you can see the increase in the number of output ports. I have the count as 2, so the output ports will be increased.
Yeah.
And you can see the transform parameters are also increased. Since the filter is applied before the reformat, it will be only 1. It will not be increased. So all the records will be filtered, and the filtered output will be sent to the transform parameters. And the difference between using a filter by expression component and using the select is we will not be able to collect the deselect output here. When we want the deselect output, you have to explicitly use the filter by expression component.
Okay.
Yeah. I think you are familiar with this screen.
Yep.
I will let you know what are the important components here. So left side we have the source fields, right side we have target fields, in the middle we will be having the transformation tools. We can just drag and drop from left side to right side. So initially this will be empty, and if you want the output fields to appear here before you start this transform, you can go to the ports and you can specify the output format there, and after that if you come to record format definition, that is this transform parameter, you can see the output ports here.
Okay.
Since we haven't specified the output DML, the fields will not be visible. If you specify it, your fields will be visible here. You can just drag and drop the output here, or you can just type here and you can extend it to the output fields. Okay. Thanks Assis for extending this session. So when can we meet next?
You can meet tomorrow.
Okay. Okay, same time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks Assis. See you tomorrow.